This is the high school credit art video for your watercolor project. It's your watercolor freestyle project. Here is your self-evaluation rubric. You want to make sure that you always read this carefully and before you start your project because it tells you what kind of points you can score on your project. It tells you what you're supposed to do. Now, I did make a change. You do not have to use all of the watercolor techniques. Only use half of the watercolor techniques. That means 5. Last year, as Art 1 students, I showed you the 5 techniques of wet on wet, wet on dry, crayon resist, rubbing alcohol, salt. Alright, now I'm going to show you 5 more. You want to make sure to put this paper aside, but you definitely want to keep on to it because it's going to help you with your project. I'm going to give you this paper right here. This is Watercolor Techniques, and it actually tells you how to do the techniques. We did 1 through 5 last year as Art 1 students, and so now we're going to do 5 through 10 today. You're going to work in your journal. I got my paper a little wet there. You're going to work in your journal that you have with the metal rings. You're going to have to tell me if you have a small journal or a larger one, so this way I can give you the proper size watercolor paper. Now, items that you're going to use yourself, you're going to use a paper towel, a cup of water, a brush, and watercolors. Everybody in high school credit art will have their own set of watercolors to use. This will be yours to use for the entire year. In the watercolor set brush, you will find a red brush in some sets. It will say Prang, P-R-A-N-G, on the brush. We're going to use this for one of our techniques later. So we're going to hang on to this because we're going to use it later. Items that you're going to have to share with the other people in your group is you're going to share a watercolor toolbox. In your watercolor toolbox, you're going to see some paint. This paint goes to my Art 1 students. You want to make sure to remove this watercolor right here. You're going to be using this watercolor. However, when you return your toolkit to me, this watercolor must go in cabinet 2. Do not leave it in the box. Must go cabinet 2. Inside your toolkit, you may find a brush. That is fine. You can use that brush. It's the same kind of brush that's in here. It's Prang. We're going to use this for rubbing alcohol. We are not going to use this for paint. Do not use this brush to paint with, okay? This is for our rubbing alcohol technique. You will also find rubbing alcohol, salt, and a crayon. What you will have that is different from the rest of the group, put the kit there, then in the Art 1 classes is you will be using watercolor pencils. Watercolor pencils are in a container that you will get from Miss Bartell. You can tell it's a watercolor pencil because it will say watercolor on the pencil. It will also have a picture of a paintbrush. So if you happen to find a pencil that doesn't have the word watercolor or a picture of the paintbrush on there, then you'll need to make sure to return it to me because that means it's in the wrong spot. Whatever you do, do not put these in the color pencil bin. So you're going to be using those later as well. Alright, I'm going to take my paper here. It's going to be off to the side. And we're going to do the hatching technique. With the hatching technique, you will be using the watercolor pencils. Pick a color that you want to use. And you just finished a project where you did hatching. Right? And all they are parallel lines. That's all they are. When you're done with the hatching, you're going to have your cup of water, brush, paint. And as you can see, your watercolor pencil turns into watercolor paint, watercolors. The next one that we have on the list is cross-hatching. Cross-hatching, if you remember from the project that you just did, is when they crisscross. Tic-tac-toe gone crazy. And it can really be in any direction. You can even mix in another color if you want. Here's the light green with the dark green. Or you can do maybe the blue. Alright? So then I'm going to dip my brush into the water. Then I'm going to paint. And as you can see, it mixes a color. The more water you have, the lighter it will be. I'm going to wipe my brush on here. Then I'm going to put it into the water. This is what I did with just the one color. This one was with the light green and the dark green. Wipe my pigment on my paper towel, then dip it in the water. And here is the blue with the green. Wipe my pigment on the water, right? Put the brush in the water. Now for my next one I have is stippling. The stippling's a little bit different in watercolor. Yes, it's small dots, but they're also dashes. So I'm going to let's take a purple. And you see I just put little dashes. And they can be little dashes in kind of any direction. Let's throw in some pink on one side. Mix it up. This is the stippling. Alright, dip my brush into the water, and then I paint. And then what it does is you basically just get different textures. Wipe this off. Then here's it kind of mixed. Wipe my pigment off. The next one after this is called pointillism. Pointillism was actually a time period in art where it was all these tiny little just dots pushed together. It wasn't done in pen though, however, it was done with paint. Seurat is a famous pointillist. Alright, so I put my little dots. Notice I didn't tap it, because sometimes tapping just doesn't work. Anyway, dip my brush into the paint, then I paint. So as you see, you're getting all different kinds of textures. Wipe my pigment off. And the last one is the blending of the color. You basically color as you regularly would with the color pencil. Maybe you press down so you can have a lot of pigment. Maybe you don't press down as much and your pigment's lighter. Maybe you want to mix a color, see how it goes. So basically, all you're doing is coloring things in. Some students will color in like this. As you can see, I'm shaking the table here. Some will press a little bit lighter. Alright, brush, water, and then it turns it into watercolors. If I take off some of the pigment and get a lot of water in there, I can get a very light pink. More water, the lighter the pigment. My pigment, here are the colors mixed. So I kind of have this brown. Notice that every time I go to the paper towel to wipe off the pigment, I do that because if I put it in the water, then I'm always changing water. If I wipe off the pigment off of here, see I'm wiping off the purple, water, going to green, and my colors didn't mix up. Alright? Alright, so this is your demonstration for 6 through 10. You're going to do 1 through 5. When you do 1 through 5, you'll be using these tools right here. That is actually in the other video that I can show you, but you want to make sure that you have all 10 samples. They can be on 2 pages or they can be on the 1 page. If you have a small book, you probably will use 2 pages. If you have a larger book, you can use 1 page. I do have a student that can get everything to fit. So even though you didn't see me use these here, you will use them when you do the 1 through 5. Alright? Thank you very much. Let's get to work.